The WNBA is heading toward one of the biggest crossroads in its history, and as of right now, nobody's really blinking. Months of negotiations between the league and the players have gone by, and despite a fresh proposal from the players' union that actually backs off some of their earlier demands, both sides are still stuck. The clock is ticking toward a March 10th deadline, and if nothing changes, the 2026 WNBA season, scheduled to tip off in May, is suddenly not guaranteed. At the center of all this are two very familiar names. On one side, you have WNBPA President Nneka Agwemike, speaking for the players who've been pushing to finally be treated like full partners in a league they helped build. On the other side sits Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, representing ownership in the league office, trying to grow the WNBA while controlling costs and risk. The tension between those two positions is exactly why we're here. The union has officially lowered its demands compared to what it was asking for before. That's an important detail, because it shows the players are willing to move. But even with those concessions, the gap between what the two sides want is still very wide, especially on the core issue, how the money gets split. The biggest sticking point is revenue sharing. And to really understand why this is such a fight, you have to get what gross versus net revenue means. The WNBPA is asking for a share of gross revenue. That's the total amount of money the league brings in before any bills are paid. Ticket sales, media rights, sponsorships, merchandising, all of it goes into one big pot, and the players want a fixed percentage of that full figure. Originally, the union was asking for 27.5% of gross revenue. In their latest proposal, they've actually come down to 26%. That seems like a small change on paper, but in real dollar terms over several years, that's tens of millions left on the table. It's a real concession. The league, on the other hand, doesn't want to share gross. They want to share net. Under the WNBA's proposal, 70% of net revenue, what's left after operating costs, arena expenses, travel, staff salaries, marketing, and everything else is paid, would be subject to sharing. That sounds generous until you do the math. After all those deductions, 70% of net is equivalent to less than 15% of gross. So you've got the players asking for 26% of the full pie, and the league effectively offering something under 15%. That's not a small disagreement. That's almost a philosophical difference about whether the players should be treated like partners in growth or like an expense line to be managed. The union's latest proposal didn't stop at revenue share. They made several adjustments in other key areas to try to break the stalemate. One of those is housing. For years, housing benefits have been a flashpoint behind the scenes in the WNBA. We're talking about players being moved mid-season, struggling to afford rent in expensive markets, or having their living situations tied to fragile contracts. In the previous proposal, the WNBPA had tied guaranteed housing to multi-year deals and set a salary threshold at 80% of the maximum salary, meaning players below that level would have team-provided housing, and the highest earners would be expected to secure their own. In this new version, the union dropped the multi-year contract requirement entirely. That's a big shift. They're no longer saying, you have to sign players long-term to guarantee them a roof. They also relaxed the threshold, lowering it from 80% to 75% of the max salary. That means more players, especially those in the mid-tier, who are often bouncing between starting and bench roles, would fall under the housing protection line. Anyone above that 75% mark would be on their own in terms of living arrangements. This isn't a flashy headline item, but in terms of day-to-day quality of life, housing might be one of the most important parts of the entire CBA. For many players, especially those not on Supermax deals, knowing that they'll have stable, covered housing for a season makes a huge difference in how they plan their lives and their off-season commitments. Then there's the question of development players. Development slots have been a way for teams to keep young or fringe players around at lower salaries, often without the same security or long-term guarantees of fully roster veterans. In earlier talks, the union wanted no hard cap on how long someone could be kept in that status. That approach prioritized giving players a chance to stick in the league even if it took time. In their revised proposal, the WNBPA has given ground again. They're now proposing a 6-season limit for development players. After 6 seasons of service, you couldn't be kept in that category anymore. The idea being that if you've been around that long, you either deserve full status or you move on. The league, however, wants that limit even lower, somewhere in the 4 to 5 year range. From the league's perspective, a shorter cap keeps the development pipeline moving and limits the number of veterans sitting on lower-tier deals. From the player's point of view, too short a cap risks pushing people out of the league before they've had a real chance to establish themselves, especially given how few roster spots there are in the WNBA to begin with. Even beyond revenue share, housing, and development player rules, there's another huge battleground: the salary cap. The union is not budging here. The WNBPA is holding a demand for a $9.5 million team salary cap in the first year of a new agreement. That number reflects how players see the value of the product they put on the floor, especially as the league's visibility, ratings, and sponsorship appeal have grown in recent seasons. The league's offer is significantly lower. The WNBA is proposing a cap of $5.65 million in 2026, the first year of the new CBA, with increases over time tied to revenue growth metrics. So yes, the cap would go up every year, but from a much smaller starting point than what the players are pushing for. Under the league's proposal, maximum individual salaries would jump from $1.3 million in 2026 to $2 million by 2031. Average salaries would move from $540,000 to $780,000 in that same period. Put those numbers next to what players are earning right now, and the jump looks dramatic. The 2025 Supermax sits at just $249,000. Going from that to potential $1.3 million or $2 million max down the road is a massive increase on paper. But from the player's vantage point, this is where context matters. Those higher salaries in the league proposal are built into a structure where the cap itself is lower than what the union believes is fair, and where their overall league revenue is far below what they're asking for. Any offer that looks like we'll get you to $2 million by 2031 sounds great in isolation. When you pair it with less than 15% of gross revenue and a lower team cap, it feels like a ceiling placed on how quickly the league is willing to let compensation grow, even if revenues spike faster. The union's $9.5 million cap demand is a way of saying, we want the structure in place now that lets the league pay more as it grows without having to renegotiate everything again in a few years. It's about building flexibility and upside in from the start, instead of relying on the league office to voluntarily come back to the table later. So to recap where each side stands right now, the players have come down from 27.5 to 26% of gross revenue. They relaxed their position on housing by dropping the multi-year requirement and lowering the salary threshold to 75% of the max. They've moved from wanting an open-ended development player system to accepting a 6-season cap, but they're drawing a hard line on a $9.5 million salary cap. The league is holding to a model built around 70% of net revenue, which works out to under 15% of gross, a $5.65 million cap to start in 2026, and a 4 or 5 year limit for development players. They're offering big raises from current salary levels over the life of the CBA, but on terms that keep them firmly in control of how quickly and how much the players actually share in future growth. All of this is happening while the calendar keeps moving. The 2026 WNBA season is supposed to start in May. Fans are thinking about rookie classes, trades, new super teams, new rivalries. Coaches are trying to plan rotations and training camps. International players are mapping out whether to play overseas, stay home, or commit fully to the WNBA. Networks and sponsors are thinking content and branding. And in the middle of that, you have a March 10th deadline that could change everything. If no agreement is reached by that date, a strike becomes a very real possibility. That doesn't automatically mean the season is gone, but it does mean training camps could be delayed, preseason plans could be shredded, and opening night might not happen on time. For the first time, we'd be talking seriously about the WNBA facing the kind of labor unrest that has hit other major leagues in the past. For players, especially those not on huge overseas contracts or with big endorsement deals, there's a lot at stake. Missing games means missing paychecks. At the same time, this is also their moment to push for long-term structural changes, better revenue sharing, stronger salary caps, more secure housing, and clearer rules for development players. These aren't just abstract numbers. They're issues that shape how long careers last, how players live during the season, and whether they can afford to stay in the WNBA instead of chasing steadier money overseas. For the league, there's risk on both sides too. Give too much, too fast. And ownership worries they'll be operating at bigger losses as they continue to invest in growth. Hold too firm, and you risk alienating the very players who've driven a surge of interest in women's basketball, while also jeopardizing the momentum the league has finally built in TV ratings, merchandise, and fan engagement. That's why this negotiation feels different. It's not just about a small bump to the Supermax or one more flight upgrade. It's about what kind of league the WNBA is going to be over the next decade. A partner-driven model where players share meaningfully in upside, or a more traditional top-down structure where increases come slowly and selectively. Right now, all we know for sure is this. The union has moved off its opening position. The league has not matched that movement in kind on the headline issues. And the two sides remain far apart on revenue sharing and the salary cap, even as they tweak around the edges on things like housing and development players. As fans, as people who care about the WNBA and its future, this is the moment to pay attention. These CBA numbers might look dry, but they're going to decide a lot. How long your favorite players stay in the league, how many stars can fit under one cap, how much stability rookies and veterans have, and whether the WNBA can keep its top talent stateside year-round. We'll see if Nneka Ogwumike and Kathy Engelbert can find a middle ground before March 10th, or the standoff turns into something much more serious. For now, the message from the union is clear. They reduce their demands, but they're not backing away from the idea that WNBA players deserve a real share of what they help generate. And the message from the league is just as clear. They're willing to raise salaries, but only within a framework that keeps full financial control in their hands. The next few weeks will tell us which vision wins out, or if both sides are willing to bend just enough to keep the 2026 season on track.